You may not have seen a ton of news headlines about it, but believe it or not, Congress and the president recently came together to pass and sign a bipartisan bill to help confront the opioid epidemic. It's called the Support for Patients and Communities Act, and lawmakers say this is a huge breakthrough that's going to boost access to addiction treatment, it's going to encourage interventions, and control the abuse of opioids in our country. But how does this impact your organization, your business, or perhaps even your clients? Tony Sheath is the CEO and he's the managing partner here at Point of Care Partners. He's just published this article. It's called High Impact Opioid Legislation Affects ePrescribing, EPA, and PDMPs. And we're going to break this down for you today. So Tony, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Sunny.
So let's start by talking about e-prescribing, because this new law mandates that prescriptions for controlled substances that are covered under Medicare Part D must be transmitted electronically starting January 1st, 2021. So how do you think this law is going to impact e-prescribing in general?
You know what? It's going to have a profound impact on e-prescribing in general. First, let me say that I see e-prescribing as a win-win-win, a win for patients, a win for providers, a win for pharmacies. Because when a doctor writes a prescription, it takes less time than it did on a piece of paper. It goes electronically to the pharmacy. When it's at the pharmacy, they can fill the prescription before the patient even shows up. So when the patient comes in, they can hand them the prescription directly. That's profound. That's why I've been involved in electronic prescribing for 18 years. This legislation is going to help because it mandates that if a doctor's going to write a prescription for a controlled substance for a patient, a Medicare patient, that they have to do it electronically. And that's one of those things that today what happens is doctors write most of their prescriptions electronically, but then they step away from the computer and on a piece of paper they'll write a controlled substance. Now they're going to be doing it all electronically. And so we're going to see a profound, dramatic increase in use, and that's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, so we're basically setting precedents with this and making this law. We're kind of forcing them to do this, and it could lead to more prescriptions being done by e-prescriptions.
Absolutely. In fact, in a couple of states where e-prescribing has been mandated, Connecticut and Maine, for example, just a few months after, so like 9 months after the law went into place, almost 50% of prescribers were prescribing controlled substances electronically. So it's something that we think is really going to be a boon to the industry and to prescribers.
Let's talk about the Electronic Prior Authorization. It's referred to as EPA. And we know this has been around for a long time, but adoption on this has been pretty slow. So how do you think this new law can change that?
It has been around for a long time. It's another one of those that sort of helps everybody. If a physician or his or her staff can request prior authorization electronically, and it can be received, kind of before the patient even leaves the practice to go to the pharmacy. When they get to the pharmacy, they're going to get the prescription, that they requested, as opposed to sometimes, before EPA, they might get to the pharmacy and find out that it's not covered or that prior authorization is required, which then delays treatment. So this is a way, electronic prior authorization is a way to get therapy to the patient faster, which is good for all of us. This particular bill sort of requires that first of all, that the secretary pick a standard for prior authorization. So today, there are two different standards that are out there that are being used. And so the secretary is going to be able to name one. And what that will do is that'll help states to be clearer in their legislation. Right now, they allow, a portal, or they might allow fax. This will allow them to be clearer by stating and naming one. And then the second thing that's going to happen is that we're going to see more what's called retrospective instead of prospective prior authorization. The retrospective is that old-fashioned process where they go to the pharmacy, they find out that prior authorization is required there, and then they have to request it and go back to the doctor, either call them or send a request. This is going to lead to more prospective, which then allows the doctor to have the conversation with the patient before they leave. Yes, this is covered, or maybe it's not, but here's an alternative that is covered. And again, that's going to get therapy to the patient faster, which is good for all of us.
Let's talk a little bit about PDMPs, which we know are databases. They're state-specific databases of controlled substance prescriptions. And we do know that reviewing these databases, it's kind of common sense, that it helps with the entire workflow. It's an effective way for preventing over-prescription, or perhaps patients doing a little doctor shopping to get the prescriptions that they want. How does this law improve PDMPs and then make them more functional?
Well, you know what? This law sets aside a lot of money to help state PDMPs sort of improve their services. So one of the challenges that we have right now is that often the state PDMPs don't interact with the electronic health record. So if a doctor goes to check to see if a patient is on another opioid, they're not able to see, or maybe they are and they have to completely step out of their workflow of writing a prescription, go over, log into a portal, search the patient's information. Then once they find out the information, go back and maybe change. But anyway, it's completely outside the workflow, which is a real challenge for providers. So this is going to allow them to be able to build what we call APIs, or interfaces to the PDMPs, the EHRs to build interfaces to the PDMPs, which will allow the doctor to be able to check it before they write a controlled substance.
Sounds good. There's a lot of moving parts here. It sounds like this is going to solve a lot of different issues that doctors and patients, maybe even patients unknowingly, have been struggling with for a while. But again, it goes back to the workflow and just kind of making it happen and making it easier for everyone to do what they need to do.
Absolutely. And again, it's exciting because it's a win for everybody.
Right. All right, Tony, thanks so much for your insight today. Truly appreciate it. I know we've only scratched the surface of this new bill, the Support for Patients and Communities Act. So check out Tony's article. It's available on the website, which is pocp.com if you're not already there. And you can also reach out to us directly if you want some more detailed information about this act and how it can help your business. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Sunny.